As the game enters the GX era, the game begins to shift away from the traditions of the past as new playstyles and tech options bubble to the top. This would lead into easily the most played retro format in Yu-Gi-Oh! So enough beating around the bush and let's dive in. I'm the Law YGO, this is Retro Retrospective, and today we jump back to August 2005 with SJC Indianapolis and the foundation of what would become known as G.O.A.T format. Hey guys, really quick. I noticed that only about 20% of you are subscribed, so if you like this video, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe below. It really does help me out. The most famous format would be formed off the first couple of GX era sets and band list changes to further shake up the massive changes of Warrior format. Flaming Eternity was released on March 1st of 2005, and it, alongside the following core set, would introduce many cards that would become important pieces of the format. The first of these, and the cover card of the set, was Sacred Phoenix of Nephthys, a 2400 attack wing beast that revives itself in the owner's standby phase the turn after it's destroyed by a card effect, destroying all spells and traps on the field when it does. This became an interesting focal point for some decks in the format to build around, similar to Silent Swordsman level 5, who operated similarly to Horus from the last format, being unaffected by the opponent's spells, and if it lands a direct attack, upgrades itself to level 7, who was a promo card in the previous 7 Trials to Glory video game, who shuts off all spell cards while on the field. 7 Trials to Glory also gave us Mind Control, which was like Change of Heart, but the monster couldn't attack or be tributed. Back to Flaming Eternity, Chiron the Mage is an 1800 beater that can discard a spell to pop a spell or trap on the field, useful for some strategies needing more back row removal. Golem Sentry was the newest addition to Pac-Man, able to flip itself back face down and bounce an opponent's monster on flip summon. Armed Samurai Ben-K had an interesting effect that let him attack an additional time for each equip spell on him, making him a focal point of a new combo deck that aimed to OTK the opponent. Rescue Cat could special summon 2 beasts from the deck by tributing itself, being a combo enabler alongside Last Will to enable various OTK strategies with a pool of beast monsters. Lightning Vortex is a weaker Raigeki for the cost of a discard, which was well received since Raigeki was banned at this point. Phoenix Wing Wind Blast was essentially a better version of Back to Square One, being a trap, meaning you could use it in response to cards, and it could target back row too. Good Goblin Housekeeping starts as a -1, letting you draw a card and shuffle one back. However, every time you activate it, it lets you draw another card, meaning by the third activation, it's actually a +1, as you're drawing 3 and shuffling back 1 for the cost of a trap. Lastly, for Flaming Eternity, Deck Devastation Virus let you tribute a dark monster with 2000 or more attack to destroy all 1500 and lower monsters on your opponent's field, in their hand, and all drawn cards for 3 turns, being extremely niche at the time, but powerful in certain side decks. Following Flaming Eternity, The Lost Millennium released on June 1st, 2005. This set would be iconic for introducing the fan-favorite archetype of the elemental heroes to the game, an archetype of warrior monsters that fuse with each other to create unique fusions in a mix-and-match style. Unfortunately, this opening wave of support would be an absolute flop, as the only monsters included were the original 4 vanilla elemental hero monsters, Flame Wingman, and Thunder Giant, all of which were subpar in the meta. The Ancient Gear archetype would also be introduced here, a series of Earth Machine monsters that stun opponents' spells and traps when attacking. This culminated into their boss monster, Ancient Gear Golem, who had 3000 attack and also dealt piercing damage. Unfortunately, the lock-on special summoning Golem does make it a bit of a hassle to use in the current format, but it would be useful later. Mega Rock Dragon was a new build-around boss monster, summoning itself by banishing any number of rocks from the grave, gaining 700 attack and defense for each. While rock options were still decently limited at this time, Mega Rock Dragon did see some stints of play out the gate, though was severely limited in its power ceiling. Speaking of rock options, Guardian Statue and Medusa Worm were 2 new monsters that could flip themselves face down and trigger an effect on flip summon, with Guardian Statue bouncing a monster and Medusa Worm destroying one. These 2 would find slots in the Rising Pac-Man deck, as their effects meshed nicely with the deck's game plan. DD Survivor was an arguably more powerful version of Scout Plane, summoning itself when banished while on field. This card would be the linchpin in a deck in later eras thanks to the effect in combination with cards that banished anything that left the field, but for the time was relegated as a niche option. King of the Skull Servants was the new option for zombie decks, gaining 1000 attack for every copy of itself or Skull Servant in the graveyard, and could revive itself by banishing one from grave when it was destroyed in battle. This piece would find some use in variants of zombie decks in the format, but much more as a niche option than a staple. Lastly, Brain Control, for the cost of 800 life points, could take control of a face-up monster until the end of the turn. Being essentially the closest legal option to Change of Heart available, this instantly saw staple play in most decks of the format, being easily the best card from the Lost Millennium. With all of these changes, the ban list would have to be updated accordingly, being the first instance of cards coming off of the ban section. For newly banned cards, Fiber Jar, Magical Scientist, Makura the Destructor, Butterfly Dagger Elma, Change of Heart, Confiscation, Mirage of Nightmare, Painful Choice, and the Forceful Sentry were all banned, removing the most powerful spell cards from the format, but this would be circumvented by the limits. DD Warrior Lady, Sacred Phoenix of Nephtes, Sangan, Delinquent Duo, Graceful Charity, Lightning Vortex, Deck Devastation Virus, and Mirror Force were all limited, with Sangan, Duo, Graceful, and Mirror Force all being moved out of the banned section, showing that cards can be unbanned under certain circumstances. For semi-limits, Abyss Soldier, Dark Scorpion Chick the Yellow, Night Assailant, Vampire Lord, Emergency Provisions, Level Limit Area B, Upstart Goblin, Good Goblin Housekeeping, and Gravity Bind were all semi-limited, with no releases from the list at this time. As for the ever-important question, what decks are good in this format? A massive disclaimer should be placed here that G.O.A.T format, being one of the most heavily explored and played formats, has its best decks changing constantly. Something I list here may very well not be powerful in a couple of years, as is the case with the format's namesake, so take all of these with a grain of salt. All of these positions are currently listed as such on the official G.O.A.T format website, which I'll link in the description alongside the FormatLibrary page for G.O.A.T format for you all to use as resources. For Tier 1 decks, we have Chaos Turbo, Warriors, and Chaos Warriors. Chaos Turbo is the current big deck of the format, using a combination of flip monsters and discard fodder pieces like Thunder Dragon to form a resource engine to rapidly gain card advantage and summon the boss monsters of the format in Chaos Sorcerer and Blackluster Soldier. This is mainly thanks to Night Assailant, who recovers a flip monster on discard, which can in this format include another copy of itself since its errata is not in effect here. Warriors and Chaos Warriors both function off the same base of a powerful toolbox centered on reinforcements of the army, being able to search out specific answers to board states, such as Exiled Force, Mystic Swordsman level 2, Blade Knight, DD Warrior Lady, and Dawn Zulu, with the Chaos variant placing more importance on Light and Dark Warriors to facilitate the Chaos monsters. For Tier 2 decks, we have Chaos Control, Empty Jar, Library FTK, Reasoning Gate, Rescue Cat, Chaos Return, G.O.A.T Control, and Chaos Recruiters. Chaos Control is one of the mainstays of the DM era, and it remains playable at the start of GX thanks to power cards like the Chaos Duo and Metamorphosis, which can be used in combination with various level 1 targets to summon Thousand Eyes Restrict. G.O.A.T Control is similar in this vein, with more focus placed on control options as opposed to Chaos, as Scapegoat can blank up to 4 attacks with its tokens and can use a leftover token with Metamorphosis to summon the aforementioned Thousand Eyes Restrict. G.O.A.T Control used to be considered the best deck in the format, which led to it being the namesake, but after further exploration has fallen quite a bit as better options have risen. Empty Jar and Library FTK are similar in concept as they aim to win on turn 1, with Empty Jar aiming to cycle the effects of Cyber and Morphing Jar to deck the opponent out, and Library FTK aiming to chew their own life points down with cards like Archfiend's Oath and Toon World, to then reversal quiz the opponent to 500 life points, then burn them with Black Pendant sent for the effect. Rescue Cat is another OTK deck, aiming to combine the effects of Rescue Cat and Last Will to place 3 Milus Radiant and either a Gyakugair Panda or a Des Wombat on the board to OTK the opponent with massive amounts of battle damage. The last OTK deck, and probably the most played, is Reasoning Gate, focused on using the spells Reasoning and Monster Gate to both summon powerful resource generators like Dark Magician of Chaos and Sacred Crane, and to mill various spells and non-summonable monsters to the grave to facilitate cards like the Chaos Duo, Demox Effect, and to set up for powerful Dimension Fusion pushes. Chaos Recruiter is similar in vein to Chaos Control, just more focused on the usage of recruiter monsters like Shining Angel and Mystic Tomato to cycle for powerful threats and to fuel the Chaos Duo. Chaos Return is a particularly aggressive variant of Chaos Turbo, aimed at banishing monsters for the summon of the Chaos Duo, then using Return from the Different Dimension to bring them all back and go for game. For Tier 3 decks, we have Bazoo Return, Aggro Bomb, Dimension Fusion Turbo, Gearfried Warrior, and Chaos Flip Control. Bazoo Return is similar in concept to Chaos Return, instead focused on Bazoo the Soul Eater to banish 3 monsters for its effect, then bring them back with Return for a massive damage push. Aggro Bomb, not to be confused with Panda Burn, aims to trade card advantage for damage, focused on winning key interactions to take games quickly, as cards like Yakugair Panda and Mataza the Zapper directly punish the use of cards like Scapegoat in the format. Dimension Fusion Turbo is almost a combination of the previously mentioned Bazoo Return and Chaos Return, instead focused on Dimension Fusion to push for a rapid fire combo that doesn't have to wait a turn to use Return. Gearfried Warrior aims to take the consistency of the Warrior Toolbox decks and combine them with the interactions Gearfried has with specific equip cards in the format, such as Blast with Chain and Smoke Grenade of the Thief, which both trigger their destruction effects when equipped to Gearfried. Lastly, Chaos Flip Control aims to cycle cards like Time Seal with Mask of Darkness to lock the opponent out of the game while the player gains resources, which can be further enabled by Tsukiyomi, able to reset the Mask of Darkness and forming the GOAT format equivalent of the Yata lock. If you're just starting into the format for the first time, in my opinion, the best way to start would be to play with a deck that has Chaos elements to it, while also letting you experiment with some of the more commonly used cards in the format, so either Chaos Turbo or GOAT Control would be my recommendation. Once you have a solid grasp on how the format works, you can expand your deck options with the GOAT format deck page, as they have so many different options that you're bound to find something that meshes with your playstyle. Here are some deck lists to get you started, being Dingosig's Angel Chaos Return, Geisti's GOAT Control, and Insidious's Chaos Control, which were first through third place respectively at this year's GOAT Format World Championships, hosted by GOATformat.com. GOAT Format is by far and away the most well-supported legacy format, but many people don't realize that it is the first real format of the GX era, as so many pieces of the format are DM era staples. This was about to change, as the next GX era set would not only change the format, it would change the game forever, as the landscape of what monsters could do was about to be shifted with the release of a single mechanical dragon.